welcome to the Tuesday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who just tried to teach me a complicated handshake. It's Taylor Rockwell.
Hello. I wish I could pull one of those off. I've always wanted to. Never been able to. I'm not coordinated enough.
But Paul Pogba can.
Yeah, he can. He and Eric Bailly have a handshake, as do he and Antonio Valencia.
Yeah.
But he and Eric Bailly in a bit of a bromance, and I hesitate to use that term. But there was footage today of them in training where they're like hugging each other and laughing, and Anthony Martial looks about as kind of neutral as ever in front of them. So it stands out all the more as a result.
So if you've not seen the Pogba-Bailly handshake, you can probably find a GIF or a GIF, depending on which you prefer.
A GIF.
At the somewhere on the internet. But it's essentially... I'm trying to figure out the level of it. Like if Kid and Play, Kid and Play do that dance where they end up like touching feet and spinning around in House Party. If that's a 10, what's Pogba-Bailly?
I think if we're gonna have to go with like diving scores or like figure skating scores, because it's a 10 out of 10 on execution, and I think that's a big part. Overall, I think I'm going 8.5.
Okay, it's fairly basic.
It's fairly basic, but it's that they execute it like without hesitation. They know exactly what they're doing. They also do a very good job of executing it without looking like they're trying.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like they're looking off to the sides and not really paying attention to what they're doing.
Do you think it's practiced so much to not look practiced?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I wonder if Mourinho's like, shouldn't you guys be working on some defending?
Yeah.
They're like, no, boss, we got this.
If you'll permit me, my favorite one though is last season Jesse Lingard and Marcus Rashford did one without even looking at each other, and it was just like the finger dab,
the look away finger tingle.
Yeah, but it was
it
was great because I think a lot of fans thought it was like it exemplified the fact that they had played together for so long in the academy that they like didn't even need to look. They just walked past each other and knew to do it, which did make me happy. That one probably gets a 9 out of 10.
So we will be doing more than just rating handshakes on today's show. This is our Premier League review show. We have 5 answers to questions you might have. So 2 weeks into the season, we're going to answer the questions from the previous weekend's action. Later in the show, we're going to talk about DeAndre Yedlin's almost but not quite completed move to Newcastle United. If that's news to you, you're welcome, and we'll talk about it later. We're also going to look at the goals in Barcelona's 6-2 win over Real Betis and Real Madrid's 3-0 win against Real Sociedad. Today's show is also sponsored by Mack Weldon. We will let you know our Mack Weldon players of the week because we get to choose one each.
We sure do.
Shall we start, since we've already talked about it, with Manchester United's 2-0, question mark? Yes, 2-0 win over Southampton.
Sure.
The question is, are Man United back? Are they a big team again?
So I would say they're big physically, yes. I'm going to take the literal route on this one. And I'll say that, yes, if you look at the players on the field and the way that they were playing at times in that game, it definitely looked like the Manchester United of old, where they've got that kind of ego about them. They've got those big personalities who are capable of doing big things.
I've just realised, you've got Zlatan up front, who's well over 6 feet.
6'5", I believe.
Right, and your central
his new song goes.
Central midfield is now Mo Fellaini and Paul Pogba. Those are 2 big guys.
And then you've got your usually pretty tall centre backs, and then you've got David De Gea, who himself is, I think, 6'4".
Well, like centre backs, goalkeepers, it's kind of mandatory to be tall. Central midfield, it is not mandatory.
Yeah. And it helps.
Can we talk about then how United looked then? Because suddenly you've got all these big names in one team. To me, watching, I'll be honest, I didn't see all of this game. I saw it in chunks. It looked like it all fit together.
It did. It's worth noting there that it's been against, Bournemouth and against a Southampton side that are kind of retooling. It's early in the season. You've got a new manager. You've got new faces. They obviously are going to strengthen before the window closes. So I think big old grain of salt there, because it's not like they've had, for example, Arsenal, who haven't gotten off to the greatest start. We'll talk about that a little bit. But they've played 2 very good teams in the Premier League.
Right.
So I think you have to kind of look at it from that perspective. But with that in mind, I think the things you saw it start to click. The delivery, the willingness to charge forward, the willingness to do some elaborate stuff, but then play kind of controlled soccer at times.
We talked about this a little bit last week after the first win. There are a lot of times where under Van Gaal the ball would have gone sideways or backwards, and in the end someone just took a risk and charged forward. And even if they lost the ball, it resulted in some forward momentum, and then they picked the ball up again and go forward.
Yes.
And the thing everybody was excited about was Zlatan's header. Right? Zlatan Ibrahimovic scoring against Southampton. It had me thinking that under Van Gaal, there was the thing of don't cross, essentially, right? He wasn't a fan of crosses into the box. This one, a big looping cross from Wayne Rooney that Pogba could have got to, maybe. In the end, Zlatan gets to it.
Yeah.
So if you're talking height, yes, they are a big team, and suddenly they're an aerial threat because they're allowed to cross it.
And also, just to go back to what you're pointing out with the crossing thing, remember there was the big story doing the rounds at multiple points last season that Van Gaal wanted everyone to take an extra touch in the box.
Yeah.
And it explained certain moments when, like, there was one game when Wayne Rooney should have shot first time and then, like, took an extra touch and then shot and then it was saved. That was because Van Gaal said no crosses, no direct shots. I want controlled possession shots in the box. Mm-hmm. Compare that with this game where it's balls coming in, there's shots from distance, there's all different kinds of variations in the attack. Yep. It's definitely a different team.
I also want to talk about the way that it's been a lot of Zlatan headlines, but for me, just because I'm an England fan, the story is weirdly Wayne Rooney and the way he's been able to fit into this very easily. Like his role in that Zlatan headed goal is kind of huge, right?
Well,
I love that cross. It's kind of a looping, bending, perfectly landing on Zlatan's head cross.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you can be of two minds about this, and I think most of the English press are, which is either it's starting to work, you're starting to see the signs. Because even if you look at that Community Shield game, there was a lot of disjointed play between Wayne Rooney and Zlatan. They didn't look like they knew what the other one was trying to do.
It's as if it was their first proper game together.
It could be. And then you look at this game today, and there's still signs where they don't quite know what their role is in certain situations. But that ball, I mean, it's Wayne Rooney picking a spot, anticipating where Zlatan will be, maybe anticipating where Paul Pogba would be. It's up for debate there. And then plays a really great ball that I don't think many other players in that team could play.
It's got me thinking as well about the highs and lows of Wayne Rooney. I think now, we're at a stage where we can start judging Rooney's career, right? He's 30 already, at least. When he's the main striker or the main hope, I think he has trouble, right? That's what's happened in sort of the fallow periods for Manchester United. When he's surrounded by sort of bigger names, right? And he has to almost be second fiddle. To me, that's when he does his best work. So I think he's a great player at fitting in with, say, when he's got Ronaldo and Tevez and they had that famous front three, he did great work then. When he's the lone striker in Van Gaal's system, he's kind of struggling on his own. Now he's working off of Zlatan. Not all the pressure's on him, and he can be the supplier.
You know, I hadn't thought about this at all until you bring it up, and it makes me wonder also if he needs another personality in there to distract. Because so you mentioned the Ronaldo and Tevez one, the other times that he's looked very good in the past were when Berbatov was there, and Berbatov obviously got a lot of headlines for doing Berbatov things.
So he needs a headline maker to take the attention off of him.
He needs someone to feed squirrels and smoke. And that's... if you've never heard about that, you should Google that because it's amazing. But yeah, maybe he needs players like Pogba and Zlatan to take a little bit of the attention and to have their hugs and their jokes in the post-match interview so he can just kind of play and then go back to the locker room.
Just do his business.
Exactly.
Right? All right. Can we talk a bit about Pogba? Because it ended with that magnificent handshake. It started with Pogba absolutely whiffing at a ball and missing it. And I wonder if a few people were like, how much did we pay for this gentleman? What do you make of his overall performance, though? Because I know you paid more attention to him throughout the game.
I think that the criticisms I've heard and the concerns I've heard are still valid, which is that you don't quite know where he's going to fit in a more controlled system.
Yeah.
It seems there was a story doing the rounds, I don't think this is true, but there was a story doing the rounds that Jose Mourinho was asked where he told Pogba to play, and he said, I didn't, I just said play. And like he just let him roam.
There's no way Jose Mourinho
right?
does that.
But I think he was given a lot more freedom to do what he wanted in this game, and against bigger clubs or against teams that are going to sit back, maybe he doesn't have that freedom.
Yeah.
So I think you still have some concerns there. But overall, kind of, again, just that confidence to go at people, to not get into a quicksand game, and really to treat it consistently before the match, it seemed like during the match, and then after the match, as though it's just like, yeah, it's a game, and I'm excited to be back, and it's what I do, it's my job. Like, he doesn't seem he doesn't seem prone to hyperbole, put it that way. He's just sort of like, yeah, I'm home, I'm playing. It's like sitting on my sofa, I think is what he described returning to Old Trafford.
I mean, I'm kind of convinced that he's going to be a success, but there's an element of risk in that, like, at Juventus, he's in this very established midfield with, like, Andrea Pirlo was there with him, and, like, Marquisio's there with him, and Vidal was there for a bit. Like, I don't know, I feel like it always had a shape and he had a defined role in it.
Yeah.
Even with France, the way they started the Euros was with, like Conte holding and Matuidi and Pogba to the side of him. And there's a lot of help there from other players, right? This time he's obviously United's big-name midfielder, and he's playing in a essentially two-man holding midfield alongside Fellaini. And much as I'm a big admirer of Fellaini in many ways, he's still not an actual defensive midfielder, right?
No.
So the idea of, like, Fellaini stays and holds and does the defensive work, and Pogba can then roam a bit more, which it looked like is what was happening against Southampton. That works against Southampton, but when you face a real big test, I wonder if any of that comes apart at the seams.
Yeah. Or I think it'll be interesting to see, because the team looks to have such strong camaraderie at this point, such a happy locker room. You wonder how long that lasts once kind of push comes to shove and it becomes like, no more goofing around and trying to do elaborate tricks. Like, you got to get back and do your defensive job and stay in your shape.
Or maybe less handshakes, less Instagram, more...
Yes, more drills.
More interceptions. Less Instagram, exactly. More interceptions.
Yeah. So we shall see. I'm trying not to get too excited since I'm a Manchester United fan. We'll see what happens, because there's much room for optimism and much room for concern.
And we've also got a thing where we don't want to make too many judgments about teams and how they're doing this season after 2 games, right? I think after next weekend, it'll be 3 games in, we can say sort of, what do we know? What are the patterns of the Premier League? So that's going to be, I think, our show early next week. We'll have some real answers.
Sounds like a plan. But until then, let's answer some other questions.
Big question. After that great start where Liverpool beat Arsenal 4-3, great if you're a Liverpool fan, obviously, how did Liverpool lose to Burnley 2-0? How did this happen? Liverpool fans will be wondering, like, is this the beginning of one of those seasons where we perform in the big games and then fall apart in the quote-unquote smaller games?
No, I don't think so. I still think that they're going to challenge for top 4, if not make top 4.
So how did this happen? How did they lose to Burnley?
They're a publicly viewable team where there's lots of footage of them, because it seems as though, and I think to your credit, Daryl Grove, you're the one who I think picked up on this pretty quickly, that it seems like Burnley kind of knew what Liverpool wanted to do, at least from a possession attacking standpoint, and set themselves up to not let them do that and to sort of frustrate that approach, and frustrate it they did.
And that's how Burnley got on the board after 2 minutes with a Sam Vokes goal. If you get a chance to watch this, I feel like there's not many games where you can just watch 2 minutes and get a good feel for what happened. But if you're only looking to get a window into this, Liverpool try and possess the ball out of the back in the first minute. Burnley do this very clever thing where they pressure but don't pressure, if that makes sense. They send their players kind of high, but no one charges the guy with the ball. And they're essentially just blocking off space to make it really hard to play out of the back, but also not rushing them so that they are like, okay, I'm under pressure, I will just clear it.
It's a little bit like, the best way I can explain this, and I mean this in a complimentary way, it's like a decaffeinated gegenpress, where it's like they're not doing that full-on like high-energy press, but also a big part of the gegenpress is you don't overcommit, you don't dive into challenges and get beat, because then everyone is out of position based on your one mistake.
Yep.
And it's even like a little bit less than that, where Burnley were putting them under pressure, but not necessarily even within like a couple of yards, but it was just sort of blocking off channels and lanes so that players were forced into bad passes and sloppy passes.
And you can see all of this in the first minute. It's a green tea, decaffeinated gegenpress. It ends with, the real trouble starts with Klavan, the new centre-back. He's under light pressure, but he's got enough space to turn and play like a cross-field ball to Nathaniel Clyne, the right-back, who's immediately under a little bit of pressure from, it would be Armfield over there. But not enough that he then has to do anything quick. So he tries to play a lazy ball inside to Lallana, who's not quick to receive it. And all of a sudden, Gray is on him. Burnley have the ball. Gray drives. Gray gives it to Sam Vokes. Vokes turns, shoots, scores 1-0 to Burnley.
Right. And so I would say it's like 90 to 85% well done by Burnley. But it is, and you say Adam Lallana slow to react, it's a bad pass from Nathaniel Clyne.
Okay.
That if he puts that with a little more vinegar on it, that gets to Lallana, Lallana turns, and now he has space and he can maybe go.
Yeah.
But it's sort of what we're talking about, which is it seemed like Burnley were just trying to set themselves up to wait for Liverpool to make a mistake.
Right.
And that's what happened. Clyne played a soft pass, a hospital ball, if you want to call it that, and it's intercepted. And then, 4 seconds later, it's in the back of the net?
Yep.
Because Sam Vokes smash.
Sam Vokes smash, he did indeed. And then here's the thing, right? If you've got a team, the way Liverpool come at you, you can sort of try and sit back and counter. If you get an early goal, you definitely sit back and counter. Because famously, Klopp's Liverpool, and even Klopp's Dortmund in certain times, were not great at being the team that has to be on the front foot and have the ball and break a team down. Right? There's no like fast action, like end-to-end press and counter-attack if you have the ball on the top of Burnley's box.
Yeah.
So then they can defend deep and eventually Burnley get their chance to counter.
Yeah.
And when you see Burnley's second goal, you've got to look at Klavan again, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because a little bit at Sturridge, right? Sturridge loses the ball.
Yeah, and a little bit just the gods convening to be cruel to Liverpool.
Yeah.
Because it's Stefan Defour gets the ball, drives forward, and then does take a sloppy touch. He takes a heavy touch, and that's what Klavan reacts to. Steps to try to win that ball. Maybe he's a little slow in doing so, but still gets a foot on it, and it's just an unfortunate deflection.
Because it just ricochets between them, right? And it bounces
straight into the path of Defour. It's basically if he had taken a good touch, that's what would have happened.
And then Klavan catches up, but maybe that's not the best thing he could have done.
And that's where you can kind of see the panic of the newbie come in, because rather than sprint back to a zone that he needs to occupy rather than sprint back and cover an open man. He sprints back to try to cover, I think it's at that point Gray who's gotten the ball. But then he's another one, and we'll talk about this later on with Leo Messi, where it's like once you have a bunch of people trying to converge on one player, seems like a good thing, but then no one really knows if it's their job and everyone's just doing last-ditch diving challenges, and then you can find the opening.
It's the weird paradox of defending, right? The more people try to tackle one player, I'd say the better chance of success that player has.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because, Klavan comes in and Gray can just step across him, shoots 2-0 to Burnley.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for maybe Liverpool excuses, if you're a Liverpool fan and just want a ray of hope.
Future Players Player of the Season.
Mane was not there, injured for this game, and he was so impressive against Arsenal. You really feel like he's sort of the key to this whole thing.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, just that like kind of that dynamism, that creativity, that belief that we talked about with Man United. I think he brings that to the game as well.
But if you don't want to be optimistic, you can say Liverpool have played 2 games and conceded 5 goals.
Yeah, not great. But then you talk about, you have Joel Matip, who I think I'm mispronouncing that one. I feel like there's a crazy elaborate way to pronounce that, but I could be wrong. Injured, was on the bench, but still not ready to go. I think the biggest one, and this is where I have a hard time blaming Klopp, is the situation with Sakho, where you expected him to be this key player who I think Klopp put a lot of faith in last season and was rewarded with strong performances. Then he, it seems like, shows up overweight, not really excited to play.
I've not been following this.
Yeah, he was sent home from their preseason tour. Like he's basically, and now they're going to send him out. It looks like maybe on a permanent, maybe on a loan, but loan doesn't really make much sense to me.
Was he mad about Euro 2016?
Maybe that's what it was. But regardless, he basically, it has been a problem for them where I think they never expected to have a problem, and it's something that they're having to scramble to deal with. And so I think that explains why you do have some defensive issues. And then on top of that, you have the goalkeeper getting injured, kind of a bit of flux there too.
Oh, yeah. All right, so best of luck to Liverpool.
Yeah.
We'll have more of a judgment after we see the pattern after 3 games.
Yep.
If we talk about Liverpool's opponent last week.
Sure.
So Arsenal lost 4-3 to Liverpool last week. There was a chance to bounce back against Leicester City, who it seems aren't quite after. They're obviously not looking as good as last year when they lost to Hull City. So it was a chance to really get back on track. Instead, Arsenal 0, Leicester City 0. Twitter had a lot of frustrated Arsenal fans. Are Arsenal fans right in sort of panicking this early in the season? I really feel like some patience has broken. Something went wrong.
Maybe this is like too semantic. I don't know, but I would say they're not right to panic, but I think they're right to be frustrated.
Okay,
because it seems like there have been issues that needed to be addressed throughout the entire offseason, before the offseason, throughout last season, that still haven't been. Maybe there's rumors about why that might be the case, why that hasn't been the case, but it still seems like obvious issues are becoming increasingly obvious, especially to opponents.
Oh, why would you say that?
Because I think if you don't have a world-class striker, which I think a lot of Arsenal fans think you need, so that you're trying to experiment with, like, maybe we'll try Sanchez. Maybe, I know we got some emails about this, maybe you try Walcott. Like you're still trying to figure some stuff out, whereas I think a lot of fans would say, like, no, you've tried stuff, it's not working, go sign a guy. Like, bring somebody in who can do something, and if your opponent says, oh, okay, well, they've got Sanchez, and they might bring in Walcott as your forwards, okay, great. We'll mark for pace, and we won't worry about balls in the air.
I did notice that's the thing I saw on Twitter because I watched this game live. A lot of people saying, sarcastically saying, "Oh, don't worry, Arsene, you can just bring them in later. There's no need to bring in the big players now." Because held back on the bench was Mesut Ozil, Olivier Giroud, and I think in the end Jack Wilshere came on. And Wenger didn't introduce them until the 70th minute or so. And I really have an idea of, I think, why Arsenal fans are frustrated, but also why Arsene Wenger did it. They're his European players coming back, aren't they? They're his Euro 2016 players coming back.
Yeah, but I wanted to say, if you want to go why Arsenal fans are frustrated, and again, this is a lot of message board fodder, so I haven't looked at the statistics myself, but it was a lot of points about the fact that before you bring in Giroud, lots of crosses coming in, it's not working. You bring in Giroud, and they stopped crossing. And so it's that's the whole point. You bring in the big forward so you can play the ball in the air and have the big guy win the ball, or have the big guy settle the ball, as we saw him do in the Euros and in season past. And in this game, they kind of changed their entire game plan without maybe telling Olivier Giroud.
Well, to me, this whole thing it's the inverse of the Arsene knows. Remember the whole Arsene knows? It's almost like a meme of a thing Arsenal fans would say that they trust in Wenger, right? To me, Wenger clearly has a process in that he has this thing where players who played at the Euros get this many weeks break, and then he eases them back in. And to me, that's the reason that these players came into this game so late. Right? And I think if you're into the Arsene Knows thing, then you believe that this is for the long-term good of the season. You don't bring Giroud and Wilshere and Ozil in too soon and get them injured and ruin their season. It's about making sure that they're going to be there for the long haul. So I think there still might be a thing where if you trust in the process, you eventually get the best out of Mesut Ozil, as opposed to risk breaking him for a chance to beat Leicester in the second game of the season.
Okay, that's fair. But I also
You're about to disagree.
I also think I disagree. And I say this with the caveat that I know this is a conversation that lots of people have had on lots of different occasions. I think we never have, so bear with us. But that to me is philosophy, right? That's like, we have this plan where we can bring them in and we'll be ready to go and we'll be all guns blazing in November
or sports
October.
Science.
Fine, but my point would still be that the Premier League at this point, with everybody kind of retooled, you have, 7 title contenders at this point, or 7 perceived title contenders.
Plus Hull City.
Plus Hull City, third place right now. You kind of can't do that. You can't afford to sacrifice the first month of the season to get your players fully fit for March.
So are we going to be saying, go sign a centre forward?
Yeah, I think so. And then you look at their injury concerns, and this is where I say I don't necessarily fault Klopp because it was sort of this unforeseen circumstance. Whereas, we talked about it before the season began that signing John Brooks might not be the worst idea, given the kind of weakness they have, the lack of strength they have in center back. And
Holding started again. Yeah, he started alongside.
Yeah, because we knew Mertesacker was injured coming in. Gabriel picks up an injury. Now you're down. The who's the gentleman who plays for Valencia and Germany, whose name I should know, Mustafi.
Yes,
Mustafi. It seems like that transfer is not going to happen. That seems to have fallen through. So it just seems like there's a lot of things that could have been righted, and they haven't been dealt with directly, and I think that's a source of frustration as well.
And I think in an era where someone's paying 73 million euros for Gonzalo Higuain, I almost feel like there's like a sticker shock thing for Arsene Wenger. I know he wants Higuain because he's talked about it before, right? And I think maybe he's just been around so long that you've got that thing where, have you ever had grandparents who are like, milk costs how much? You know what I mean? And they're outraged by it. Yeah. It's just inflation, and you just have to live with it.
You haven't listened to Football Weekly this week, have you?
No.
Jonathan Wilson literally has a story about how his grandfather wouldn't buy hot dog buns, I think, or he wouldn't buy buns for something because the price went up 6 pence.
Right.
And he was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not participating in this. And he's like, yeah, but they're not going to change the price for you. Nothing's going to be different. They're going to keep the price. You're just not going to have the food you want.
So is this what Arsene Wenger's at?
Yeah, I think so.
My dad's doing it with beer. He's like, £3 for beer? Yeah, Dad, it's been that way since 2007. Yeah. Just be glad it's under £4.
It's how it works.
Never go to London.
Yeah, and I also think, and this is why, again, I say, I don't think panic is fair because it's an early season, you're 2 games in, lots could go right, lots could go wrong. But I think frustration makes sense. And again, coming from a Manchester United perspective of seasons past when we need this player, they need to sign this guy, this is obvious, why aren't they doing this? And you look at every other team in the league, and Chelsea are signing Cesc Fabregas, who United was linked with forever, and Thiago Alcantara, same thing. And I think if you're an Arsenal fan, you see these obvious areas that need to be addressed, and you're waiting and nothing's happening while everyone else around you is signing players and getting stronger, and you sort of see that gap widening, even while your coach says, oh, it's okay that the gap is widening because eventually we'll close that gap. And it's just like, no, that's not making me feel better about the gap that you've just acknowledged is widening.
Mind the gap.
There we are. There we are.
Maybe the solution...
Mind the gap and pay £3 for beer.
So there's a week left in the transfer market, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the solution is someone at Arsenal, either someone on the board who wants to spend money, or maybe a fan can go undercover, needs to move some decimal points.
Well, there was the story...
Then Gonzalo Higuain is 7.5 million.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, well, that's more than I paid for Bergkamp, but... okay, we can do it.
Yeah, it's not like it's his money. That is the other element to it. But there was the great story of the guy who's working the Arsenal shop who resigned, and his resignation letter was like, "I'm saving you this money so you can spend it in the transfer window." Even though I make, I think, 10 times less than what Theo Walcott makes in a week.
Yep,
kind of a bummer.
Arsenal fans, hang in there. It's got to get better, right?
Yes.
And maybe we'll get better before August 31st when the transfer window closes. Up next, we got to talk about
who was the best American playing in the Premier League this weekend.
And selections are thin.
I'm going to edit that. I'm going to say who was the best American in the Premier League this weekend, and I'll explain why when I give you my answer. But why don't you tell us your answer and or your nomination? I think it's a bit obvious.
Well, the only 2 possible nominations, I believe, are Brad Guzan, who was in goal for Middlesbrough, and Lyndon Gooch, who was playing outfield for Sunderland.
Sure. Lyndon Gooch is scouted by
Justin Herring.
Justin Herring sent in a report essentially saying, Gooch did some stuff well, had a really good cross, but didn't do anything terrible. Right. So a decent performance overall.
That's more or less true. I watched the game. I kept an eye on Gooch, so I'll let you know my more details getting report maybe.
Sure. Okay. Give it to us then.
So last week, Lyndon Gooch basically played left wing for Sunderland against Manchester City and did a lot of defensive work, right? This week against Middlesbrough, he also sort of played left wing but also defensive midfielder in the first half. He did two jobs. In the second half, he was a straight-up defensive midfielder. It was a really odd tactical formation-y type thing that David Moyes was doing with Lyndon Gooch.
That sounds really good to me, actually. That sounds very...
That this 20-year-old American is trusted with this somewhat complicated job.
And has the intelligence to be able to understand, your role has transitioned, now you're doing this, and then you have to know all the other 46,000 things that go along with that transition.
So picture this, right? When Sunderland went forward, and this is a big game, right? This is the Tees-Weir derby, right? I think. I sometimes get my rivers confused in the North East.
That sounds right.
But it's a big derby. When Sunderland go forward, Gooch is the left-sided attacking midfielder. Duncan Watmore is the central attacking midfielder. Januzaj is the right-sided attacking midfielder. Defoe ahead of them, right? When the ball comes back the other way and Sunderland defend, Lyndon Gooch is expected to track not just backwards but then in. So he's sort of an extra left-centre defensive midfielder. It's a lot of work for this 20-year-old guy to do, and he did a magnificent job of it. He had a lot of sort of ball wins and tackles. He had one Cruyff turn after he'd made a ball win, and he got down the left and put in a couple of good crosses. There's one that Januzaj maybe should have got on the end of.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right, that's all the good news, right? The bad news is that even though he stopped a lot of Middlesbrough attacks, got a lot of tackles in, Middlesbrough's first goal is kind of his fault because he lost a 50-50.
Oh.
So there's a ball that's kind of loose in midfield, the right side of Middlesbrough's attacking midfield, right? It's who's the right back is Nsue for Middlesbrough. Loose ball, Gooch and Nsue collide, and Nsue comes away with the ball.
Okay.
He gives it to Stuani. Stuani takes a couple of touches, hits it from distance in the 12th, 13th minute. Bang, Middlesbrough 1-0 up.
Okay.
So it's not massively his fault.
I'm going to say, in defense of Gooch, that sounds like he didn't do one thing and then 30 seconds later a goal happened.
No, 2 seconds later. It's Nsue comes forward, wins that 50-50 with him, gets it to Stuani scores. That really is how it happens. If Gooch had won his 50-50, that goal does not happen.
Sorry, you hate Americans in the Premier League. That's what I'm hearing.
I just want what's best for them.
I see. Well, speaking of what's best for them, so that's your nomination.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with, we've both been in those games where you're playing and it's 0-0, then you get subbed off and then the other team scores, your team concedes, and you're sort of see, that's what happens. So maybe, just maybe, that's Jeff Cameron this week. Maybe that's why I changed it from best American playing in the Premier League to best American in the Premier League, because he was on the bench, did not play, as Stoke City were thrashed by Manchester City 4-1.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say maybe
he may stink on him.
He looked a little bit better in the end. Didn't concede a penalty for getting all handsy.
Well, Ryan Shawcross did.
Yes, he did.
So I guess we have to talk about this, right?
But I think, but before we do that, we'll say Lyndon Gooch wins the best American in the Premier League this weekend.
Because he stepped foot on the third. Oh, Brad Gassan's the only winner, but I think maybe Lyndon Gooch is the guy we're most excited about.
Yes, I think so.
And also genuinely a contender, I think, to be called up for a Klinsmann squad in September, based on the fact that he needs to be cap-tied and the fact that Klinsmann does seem to give a lot of credence to the idea that you're competing, you're in your rhythm at a top-level team, you're playing the Premier League. I think Klinsmann is at least thinking it over.
So he should be.
He's a name to look for when the roster comes out. Maybe not too many days from now.
Yeah, it's coming up soon.
We're getting there. We're getting there. All right, to Stoke Man City.
Yes.
Jeff Cameron, not to blame for any of this.
Mike Dean to blame for some of it.
Depends who you support, right? Actually, no, you support both teams.
Yep.
Right? So Mike Dean, the referee, called one penalty on Ryan Shawcross, the Stoke City defender, for, I can't remember who it was, but for grabbing the arm of an attacker and holding him back, which Shawcross seemed kind of hard done by in that. Later in the game, he calls a penalty on Raheem Sterling for pretty much just touching a Stoke City attacker, more or less. And it seems like he'd gone heavy on the directive to award penalties for any grappling in the penalty area.
Pushing or pulling in the penalty area leading up to a corner or a set piece, or like a free kick.
Yeah, so when a cross is about to come in from a set piece, So I guess the question is, has Mike Dean over-interpreted his directions?
No, he is not. Okay. Because the Shawcross one is definitely a penalty. Like, he's absolutely pulling the arm back, holding onto a player, not allowing for separation that would otherwise naturally occur.
But isn't it weird that when you say naturally occur, that thing does naturally occur in Premier League boxes week in and week out, right? There's so much grappling.
Yeah, but I mean, so too did many things that don't exist anymore. Yeah. Two-footed challenges that weren't even cards. Like, you can make an argument that it's the evolution of the game, and I do think that it...
Oh, we go into Arrested Development, no touching.
Yes, exactly. We should have that screamed before every free kick. George Michael can come in. Or no, George Bluth, excuse me, George Sr. But... So it makes sense to me because that's something that I think they would have been allowed to get away with last season, but it shouldn't be. You're pulling a player back. You are not allowing an opportunity to occur because you are cheating.
Yeah.
That makes sense. The Raheem Sterling one, I do think, even though Scott Zawati would say it doesn't happen, it felt a little bit like a makeup call. Just in the sense that he was like, there was contact there. It looked like Raheem Sterling at one point does kind of close his hand on a jersey for maybe a second or two.
Yeah.
But that might be enough for Mike Dean to say, like, hey, man, I called this before. You got a closed hand on a jersey. Calling it again.
Are we being judgmental here because Raheem Sterling is a smaller guy?
Yeah, I think so.
When Raheem Sterling grabs a bit of your jersey, it's almost non-threatening because I can't remember who the Stoke player was, but I was never convinced that Sterling could hold on to that guy.
I think it might have been Shawcross again.
Really?
I could be wrong. But, I think I'm a little bit more conflicted about this one because the commentator, or the play-by-play, or the color commentator, excuse me, said at first, like, oh, yeah, it's the same thing, and then said, oh, he's not even looking at the ball. He's just blocking the run. And so maybe if that's the case, if he's just trying to block off runs, then it's the same thing where you are jostling, like, preventing opportunities in the box. Mm-hmm. But to me, it just seemed like, there's a size mismatch, and he's doing what you do when you're defending a set piece. You're looking at the ball, and you're using touch defending to know where the player is. He wasn't shoving. He wasn't pulling. It was just sort of like hands are here, hands are here. And to be fair, whoever the player was, I think it was Shawcross again, also, like, knocks his hands away. Like, he's doing the same stuff. So there's a little bit of a handsiness in the box.
Yeah.
And I think the yellow card that Raheem Sterling gets for it is, I guess, for perceived dissent for making a face at Mike Dean.
Incredulous face. Like, what?
But I think that's the thing. Is like, I don't even think it was like, what are you talking about? Come on, man. I think it really was like, what are you talking about?
What just happened?
I don't understand. What are you giving me a foul? I'm confused. Like, I don't think it was an aggressive face. I think it was one of genuine confusion.
So that's something to look out for in future weeks, and we'll see. Maybe after the third week, we'll know, is this a pattern that referees are going to be calling these weird, like, contacts that would have been just ignored in the past are going to be called penalty kicks.
Yeah, and it might be.
Soccer's going to get real high scoring.
And I think there's a chance it is. And yeah, I mean, I've seen that argument that, like, now you're going to have 2 and 3 penalties a game if you're going to keep going with this. I'm up in the air about that one. I'm definitely we're going to talk about La Liga in a bit. There was a call in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the Barcelona game when you had, I want to say, literally every outfield player at one point around the referee.
It was 7 or 8, yeah.
It was definitely at least 9. The only one I'm not sure about is Umtiti. I don't know if he came over, and he seemed to just be standing off to the side.
Yeah.
But that stuff it killed a minute of the game as they stood and argued. And that stuff is infuriating. And I like that it seems like players are starting to police themselves and be aware. You'll see, like, one start to walk towards them and then turn around and walk away, or his teammate will grab him and pull him back.
Yeah.
And it keeps the flow of the game a little bit better, and I like it.
Well, we'll talk about that Barcelona game in the second half of the show. But first, Taylor, we have a sponsor on today's show, and that sponsor is
Mack Weldon, makers of high-quality, highly comfortable men's clothing. Mack Weldon is better than what you have on right now, unless it's Mack Weldon, and then I think it's a draw. Although then theirs would be newer, so I think Mack Weldon still wins.
Smart clothes for smart guys. Mack Weldon makes T-shirts, polo shirts, underwear, socks. Have I missed anything? Hoodies.
Hoodies, sweatpants as well. The biggest thing they do as well is they make the Silver Line, which is antimicrobial clothing, so you can not stink when it comes to your socks and your underwear and your undershirts.
So I guess Jeff Cameron was wearing Mack Weldon this week.
He was.
He managed to not get into that Man City game and get a beating from Stoke. So part of this segment is we name a Mack Weldon Premier League Player of the Week. Taylor, who is your Mack Weldon Premier League Player of the Week?
I'd like to think it's not just because of my bias. It might well be, but I'm going to say it's Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I'm going to say that because a lot of question marks coming in as to whether or not he could do it on a cold, windy night in Stoke. We don't know that one for sure. We know Pep Guardiola can at this point. But 3 goals in 2 Premier League games.
Is that what it is? Oh, he took a penalty, right?
And then I think he has 4 in competitive fixtures because he scored at the Community Shield as well. But I mean, I think
I feel like it's not a hot streak if you're counting the Community Shield.
I'm not. I'm only counting it because I've heard other people talk about 4 and 3, and I kept getting confused because I have not missed a week. I have not slept through a whole weekend, I don't think. But it's that he's looked so comfortable. It's that he stepped up and took that penalty, and Zlatan'd it home. I would say, and never looked too concerned. But then I think it's also is sort of doing a thing, and this is my personal observation, that it seems like he's kind of letting Paul Pogba be the goofy, crazy one, and he is just doing a very understated but still Zlatan role as well.
Stoic Zlatan, right?
Yeah, I really love if you go back and watch their post-match interview when he, I guess, thought he could have had a hat trick if Paul Pogba had passed to him at the very end of the game instead of shooting, and they ask him Paul Pogba how he thought he played, and he's like, I thought it was really good. It was a comprehensive performance, and then I think Zlatan leans in and says but he should pass more. And it's just that comes across as mean if things aren't as good as they are. Yeah. But since things are good, it's kind of a sign that the locker room is strong. And I think so. He's a strong locker room presence and a strong performer this weekend. So for me, Zlatan is the Mack Weldon player of the weekend.
Well, good for you. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I can't select a Wolves player to be Mack Weldon player of the weekend.
So you're not selecting any player at all? Is that the route you've gone?
No, I will. I'm actually going with Sean Dyche, Burnley manager.
Right.
He's my player of the weekend, spelled Playa, player of the weekend.
Terrible. But continue.
Well, because he wasn't on the field.
Yep.
But he was coaching Burnley, and as we talked about, he did everything right against Liverpool. And the reason I'm so sort of almost proud of it is it's an English coach who doesn't have, fancy thick-rimmed glasses. You know what I mean? Or sort of the Klopp sort of persona. But he still managed to use Allardyce's term, out-tactic this great German coach.
Yeah, the best way I can explain this from my perspective is we saw Luis Enrique on the sidelines of Barcelona, and he had the kind of short sleeves, and he has, it looks like the beginnings of a sleeve on his right. I think it's his right forearm. And we were both independently of each other, and then said it kind of at the same time, is he the first manager who has tattoos? And then I think you were like, no, Sean Dyche definitely has tattoos. You just can't see them.
Apologies if he doesn't. We just kind of guessed. But that's the image you have of Sean Dyche, right? It's like this. Unfairly, you have this image of him not being European and cultured and tactically aware, but he absolutely played Liverpool like a fiddle, I guess is the way to say it.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's Burnley, who we talked about their owners don't have a lot of money. They kind of intentionally don't spend a lot of money. They're okay with being a yo-yo club because it means money's coming in and they can develop facilities and do other things off the pitch. And so with that, I think maybe that bleeds into the way you perceive him as this sort of quote-unquote small-time manager, when in reality he's proving himself to be quite an adept manager.
And small-time would have been to go out from the first whistle and sit really deep and bunker. And the reason Burnley were so successful is from the first whistle, what they did is that sort of high block. It's a risk to do that, right? You've got to back yourself to be able to close down their passing lanes high up the field, score a goal after 2 minutes, then sit deep and counter. So it's the perfect sort of tactical balance.
I like your nomination, and I understand all the reasons you're saying it. I still think Zlatan wins, only because there is no way Sean Dyche would accept a Playa of the Week award. Not his style. I can't believe that would be his style.
All right, so the segment was sponsored by Mack Weldon. Taylor, where can people go if they want to shop for some Mack Weldon clothes for themselves?
They can go to mackweldon.com. That's MACKWELDON.com. Do I need to spell .com? You think we're good? It's a
we
dot?
Got it.
Okay, cool. Okay. You can use the promo code TSS at checkout to get 20% off your first order.
And what would Zlatan wear? If you had to choose one Mack Weldon item for Zlatan to wear, what would it be?
It'd be easier if it was Pogba, because I think they have pink socks. That seems like something that Paul Pogba would go with. I think he would go with a well-fitting shirt, because they are we know they fit really nicely. They make you look good.
The t-shirts,
yeah, and I think that's kind of more Zlatan style. Is it shows off his slender but muscular physique.
Okay,
there we are.
I can picture it now.
There you go. See.
Thank you
Painting
to
pictures.
Thank you, Mack Weldon, for sponsoring today's episode. All right, before we talk La Liga, we got to talk DeAndre Yedlin. Speaking of recent purchases.
Yeah, so my notes are Barcelona, Madrid, Yedlin. So, yeah.
Let's start with the biggest first.
Sure.
So, DeAndre Yedlin, it looks like, is making a permanent move from Tottenham to Newcastle United down in the Championship. Yep. Not a loan move, from what we understand, a permanent move. Before we hit record on this episode, we haven't got confirmation, but we do have someone posting video of Yedlin landing at Newcastle Airport with 2 bags.
Mm-hmm. 2 bags that he's carrying himself. Mm-hmm. He wheels across the drive area to a waiting van, and into that van he goes.
And he doesn't have great control of the bags, but he does move very quickly.
I see what you did there. So it looks like it's happening.
And we had, I apologise, I can't remember who asked us this. We had a tweet just asking basically good move or bad move.
I think they said good move or terrible move or horrific move or something.
But it's a good question. Mm-hmm. So what do you think?
My first reaction was bad move because I would have preferred to see him stay in the Premier League and challenge for a spot there and earn a starting spot, or just come in and get a starting spot maybe at Sunderland. No.
Yeah.
I would have preferred, if he's moving, I would have liked to see him go to a Premier League club.
Okay.
But I think the more I think about it, he doesn't have Big Sam at Sunderland anymore. David Moyes maybe doesn't know what to make of him, so even if he goes there, not guaranteed to start.
Yeah. David Moyes literally never worked with him. Right? Yedlin and Moyes have never worked together because he was back at Spurs before Moyes came in.
Right, exactly. So with that in mind, I think you look at Newcastle, who still have Rafa Benitez as a coach. Mm-hmm. It still has the signs of a club that are, very much intending to come right back up to the Premier League. And if he can cement his roles
right now,
if he can, not many games into the season, but it's more about what they're doing. That said, they are getting rid of a few players here and there, so who knows? It seems like they are trying to come right back up, and if he can cement his spot as that starting right back, then he comes back to the Premier League next year with Newcastle, still a big name club, as their starting right back.
Here's why I think it's a good move, is because I looked into what's going on with the right back spot at Newcastle United.
Yeah,
it's a mini disaster area. So Yedlin is, I think, going to parachute almost straight into that spot.
That works.
All right. Mm-hmm. Here's what's going on. Daryl Janmaat was there, Dutch defender. Remember, one of our favourite defenders from 2014 World Cup.
He of the curly mop hair,
and the same name has got me excited. So he was the right back.
I want to interject to say, I might be totally wrong here. Listeners, that's how you spell Daryl, right?
Daryl?
Yes.
Yeah, same as Daryl Janmaat.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Because we get a lot of different spellings.
Oh, yeah.
Generally speaking, people get Taylor. Sometimes it's Tyler, but usually Taylor's right. Yeah. Yeah, but we get all different forms of Daryl. It's the Daryl Janmaat version. And one day, Daryl Janmaat will say, I spell it the way Daryl Grove does. But until then.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
So Janmaat, I think it looks like wanted a move back to the Premier League. Yep. He's like, I'm not a Championship player. Mm-hmm. I'll play the first game for you, which is what he did. He played right back the first game. And I think, again, before we hit record, it looked like he was moving to Watford.
Yep.
Yeah, where he'll probably get to play more wing-back here, which I think is what he prefers. Mm-hmm. So Daryl Janmaat on the way out. That's one right-back gone, right? Rafa Benitez brought in a guy that I think he had faith in. His name is Jesus Gamez, who was sort of Atletico Madrid's second or third choice fullback. Came in the summer, so Benitez signing, a guy that he knows, apparently was in not great shape.
Hey boy.
Bad enough that he was on the bench for the first 2 games, and then the most recent game, not even part of the matchday squad. Benitez has basically said, yeah, he's got some work to do.
Okay.
And Newcastle fans are all asking, what is going on with this guy? So it looks like essentially he brought Jesus Gamez, Benitez did, and it's been kind of a bust. Mm-hmm. So in the meantime, remember Anita, the midfielder, has been filling in at right back. So there's a hole there, basically, because Janmaat's gone and the replacement wasn't working out. So Yedlin is like the emergency replacement, but probably permanently.
Yeah. Okay, so all of that makes sense. And then I do wonder if there's a small, tiny little bit that if you're the Newcastle board, you're sort of like, and we can get a player that maybe Sunderland still wanted, and then we can get one over on Sunderland as well.
Well, definitely Sunderland fans wanted him, right? Because they had a lot of positive things to say, mostly because of Donald Love's not great performance against Middlesbrough.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah.
So, but it's good for Yedlin because he's going to a place where he definitely looks like he's going to start.
Yes.
I hope I haven't jinxed him.
Yeah, you may have, but we shall see.
Maybe Jesus Gamez can keep eating his way through Newcastle.
Yeah. So how do you watch Championship games, by the way? You watch the Wolves on beIN Sport Connect?
Yes. Right? So some games are on beIN Sport. Some games are on beIN Sport Connect, which is their website. It's like ESPN3, like a streaming channel, which you can then get through the website or the app.
It seems like there are a lot of compelling reasons to suddenly pay attention to the Championship, more so than there were for me in years past.
Wolves in third place.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
And again, if you're
Benfica in third place.
If you're not, how dare you? If you're not familiar with Newcastle United, I mean, this is a team with like a 50-something thousand seater stadium. People in Newcastle are absolutely football crazy.
Yep.
So the other reason this is a good move is instead of battling relegation with Sunderland, which can be quite a dour experience, right? It's going to be probably high-flying Newcastle United with massive tsunami roaring Yedlin on. I mean, this will be a huge experience for them. Yeah.
Let's do it.
So there we go. Keep an eye on Yedlin for Newcastle.
Sounds good. Also makes it more likely that he'll stick with his usual hair color and not have weird combinations that are a bit too flashy for a right back.
He's got to go black and white streaks.
That's fine with me. Then at least it's still monochromatic. I'll take that.
Okay, so we also we saw La Liga kick off this weekend, and we wanted to pay attention to Barcelona and Real Madrid as they started the season.
Yes.
So we DVR'd those games, and then we watched the goals roll in.
Yeah, we did. Lots of goals. I think it was 30-something goals in La Liga this weekend.
Most of them scored by Luis Suarez?
Well, yeah, so there were 9 between Barcelona and Madrid, and then I think there were 10 in Sevilla versus, I forget who Sevilla played, but it was maybe Espanyol, 6-4 in that game. So lots of goals, but most of them in 3 games. But we're talking about Barcelona 6, Betis 2, and Madrid 3, Sociedad 0.
Yeah, I was at Sociedad, so Madrid were away. Let's start with Leo Messi, because the big story I kept hearing about was Messi, before I'd even seen the game or the goals, I heard about how Messi and Suarez had this telepathic goal.
Yeah.
Because there's a goal where Messi sort of gets down the left in the box and doesn't look across, but squares it to Suarez, who's just standing there as if he'd if Messi knew he was there all along.
Yes.
And we took a closer look at this, and there's all sorts going on here. It's actually a very impressive goal, but that says a lot about how Barcelona play.
Yeah, I mean, it comes from a Betis corner. That basically Barcelona takes 16 touches to go the entire length of the field and get this goal. But it's really quick. It's a lot of one-touch passing, except for Leo Messi. I think 16 of those touches, I think maybe 10 of them were Leo Messi driving from midfield about 30 yards forward. Again, it's a good run, though, to keep it under control, to keep it tight, to allow people to transition into good attacking positions.
Sergio Busquets joins in, but doesn't see the ball.
So does Luis Suarez, who joins in too much because he's expecting the ball through the first time, doesn't come, so then he's offside. And this is where we see the brilliance and genius of Luis Suarez.
Yep, he's offside. He's behind the Real Betis defence. He stays there because he's not worried about being in an offside position because he knows that Messi is about to break the offside trap down the left.
Yep.
And this confused me, and I had to really mentally process this because you see it so rarely. You can be in a quote offside position if someone else is receiving the ball, and then the play basically restarts, right? And the phase restarts. So then your teammate can just square the ball to you. So you can stand behind the opposition defense as long as you receive the ball 2 passes later.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a very smart tactic from Luis Suarez, because if you're the defender, you'll look and say, oh, he's offside by 3 yards. It's fine. Let's get back to marking Messi. And then you turn and Messi's already broken that line. And then all of a sudden you realize Luis Suarez is now onside. And you probably have realized that slower than Leo Messi has, because he takes 2, but I think really it's the first look is all it takes. But it's maybe a quarter-second little flash of a look, see Suarez, plays it to him. It's a great ball. Suarez is now onside, and it's a lovely goal for Barcelona.
It's like if you're playing chess and someone makes a move that there's no good response to, because they can either drop with Luis Suarez and then open up way more space for all the other Barcelona attackers that are streaming at them, or they can leave him in an offside position where he's in a really dangerous spot and he ends up getting that square ball from Messi and tapping it in. Second thing to note, there is not a telepathic link between Leo Messi and Luis Suarez. It's just that Messi has a photographic memory.
Yes. Yeah, because he can pick his spots and know where people are going to be, and that's how it works.
He looks up and he sees Suarez before he receives the return pass, I think from Arda Turan, right? So he's already made a note of what Suarez is up to. That's how he knows to square it.
Exactly.
We had a good look at Leo Messi and the way he seems to be able to draw people to him and then just bend a shot into the corner.
It's the fun thing about watching him, because you start to see little things here and there that with him, it's really tough to know if it's an intentional thing or if it's just a thing that happens. But, for example, he has the shot from distance that he places perfectly into the side netting. And if you watch it, the way he kind of brings his foot around at the last second, it changes the angle of the ball completely. And that's an obvious thing. But usually if you're shooting from distance, you're just worried about power and maybe putting it on frame, but usually just hitting it as hard as you can. He hits it with power, but he also hits it with enough of a deceptive curl on it that basically, the goalkeeper's completely confused by the way he hits it.
Is it that he can do the whole thing so quickly that it looks different to the way someone else does it?
I think so, because it also explains why defenders, I think because they're so scared, it's Leo Messi, they back off and back off. Then they have to step to him because all of a sudden it's, he's going to shoot.
Yeah.
But I think he's so quick in that kind of shooting motion that it doesn't allow defenders to really react in time. So you kind of constantly see people scrambling to try to get there, and they're still going to be 2 or 3 yards away when that shot is taken.
I've got to say, I'm always fascinated by this because everyone knows that Leo Messi is this just incredible player who can run past people and seems to always keep scoring. And I love trying to figure out exactly what it is that he's doing that makes him so unstoppable. Because other players can dribble at people, other players can shoot. No one seems quite as unstoppable as Leo Messi.
Yeah. Maybe one thing he could focus on is going to one stylist. That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, you weren't impressed with his grown-out bleach blonde hair.
Well, it's like grown-out bleach blonde, but you can see the roots underneath. But then he seems to have like an orange beard. And I know you get red in your beard. I got red in my beard. But
do you?
Right here. I got a whole little patch of it. Yeah,
we'll look into that later.
It was a very strange look. I found myself consistently being like, is this the before of makeover shows after? Like, it was odd. It was odd.
Maybe the message is it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's also a distinct possibility.
Because I can still draw defenders to me, pick out my gap, bend it around them, find the far post.
And he's another one that seems to really feed on, a bunch of people are crashing on me, I'll wait one more second, wait for that chaos of 9 people trying to tackle me, take one touch, and then shoot and find that angle.
I think he knows where the tipping point is. He knows when people have charged him so much that there's space behind them, but they're not so close that they're going to get the ball off him, and he knows exactly when the time is. And then because he can shoot so quickly, like we talked about earlier, then it's time to release, right? Bombs away.
Yeah, so very impressive goals there. We talked about the one. We could talk about those 2 Messi goals. But overall, lovely goals for Barcelona. Some lovely goals for Madrid as well, though.
Yes, especially. So it starts with Gareth Bale's header in, I believe, the second minute.
You got it.
Carvajal crosses it in and Bale's up and meets it.
And it's the definitive Gareth Bale, jumps, hovers, powerful neck header.
That's in the second neck header. Yeah. A Welsh neck header.
Yep.
That's in the second minute. In added time, Gareth Bale sort of dribbles around the goalkeeper, slots it home. In between, in I believe the 40th minute, the goal of the game by Asensio, where he takes a long ball from Varane, the gentlest touch I've seen in a long time to kill the ball dead. No, sorry, not kill the ball dead. Roll the ball in front of himself. Almost. He takes the pace off it and lays it in front of himself. Then he chips the keeper.
And it's really, really special because he does put it out in front of him, but he puts it away from the on-rushing defenders. But he puts it out enough that it makes the goalkeeper think. And so then the goalkeeper has to decide, and then the goalkeeper comes. And because he charges that one, that's why Asensio is then able to just finish so deftly. And it's a very smart finish that it's the type of finish that must be especially frustrating for defenders because it's so slow and bouncing that then they stop because they're like, oh, he scored. Oh, no, wait, maybe I can. No, I can't. And you see both defenders then really try for like 3 more yards to try to get to it as it rolls into the back of the net.
Those defenders have a lot to answer for.
Yes.
So that ball comes from Varane, who's at the back. And you've got a back 3 he's looking at for Real Sociedad. Essentially makes a nice like C-shaped run around them. But essentially then one of the 3 centre-backs steps forward, one of the 3 centre-backs steps back. So one's playing an offside trap and one's covering deep. And Asensio's like, all right, I'm going to run through the middle of that.
Not great. They do that again for the second
Bale goal
as well, yeah. So well done by Madrid to break that offside trap.
Final question. A lot of people will have this question. It was my question after I saw this goal. Who is Asensio?
Yeah, he's a youngster.
He's not Cristiano Ronaldo who didn't play.
Them.
He's not Karim Benzema who didn't play.
He's not. He's an example of why Florentino Perez needs to get a prescription for some calming medication because he kind of so readily is like, we need a new player. Even Gareth Bale. A couple seasons ago, it was like, he's done. He's not going to work. We need to bring in another big name. And now I think he's probably their most important player. I'm not even going to say arguably because that makes it a lame argument. But you look at this team and there were kind of lesser-known players, at least to us, starting, Asensio being one of them, who's this guy who comes from Mallorca, comes in, gets loaned out. You don't really know if he's going to make it, but then all of a sudden here he is starting and scoring big goals.
He's like 20 years old, right?
20, yeah.
Yeah. So well done to Zidane for just being like, yeah, this is the guy.
Yeah.
Because when you give someone a chance like that and you see what they can do, now we have a new star all of a sudden. You can make your own Galacticos. You don't have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on them.
Because he was one of those. He's another one, like I think it's Sergio Canales was another one where it's like you sign this young player, you loan him back to the club where he came from, then you bring him back, then you probably loan him out again, maybe you loan him out again, and he's not going to work. We'll sign some big-name player. And here is this player like Asensio who's come in, who's done that exact same thing. He's loaned back to the club, then he went on loan to Espanyol for a season. Now he's in there and he's playing and he's doing well. And it seems like maybe this is Zidane sort of stamping his authority on this team. Like, I don't need Galacticos. I need players who will play my system. And
especially with the very sensible 3-man midfield he selected, which, if I remember correctly, was Casemiro, was Kovacic, and was Toni Kroos. Right? All magnificent players, but none of them tricky and flash.
Yeah. And then I think if you believe the media reports, if you look at like the way he's dealing with James, for example, he has basically said, because there have been tons of reports linking James with a move away, he said, you're in my plans, but you're in my plans as like the fourth option.
Yeah.
And then James was basically like, okay, so now I know what I need to do. I want to stay and fight.
Oh,
and
really?
And I think, well, but I kind of like that because you're staying and you're really trying to prove yourself at this huge club.
Yeah.
And I think that in other situations, the manager doesn't really have that backing. Maybe he doesn't have that confidence in the position that Zidane does. And so he says, yeah, I can't deal with you. You got to go. And so he's not really focused on keeping these players here and developing them and making part of them the squad. It's, we'll get rid of you, I'll bring somebody else in, and then it will be fine. So I like that it seems like Madrid are kind of establishing the foundations for stability, that it's going to make for a very exciting La Liga season overall.
Okay, speaking of excitement, we have some Total Soccer Show scouting reports.
Yeah, we do.
And
they are all over the globe, I have to say.
Before we do, one correction to a recent scouting report. I erroneously suggested that Andreas Christensen had signed permanently for Borussia Mönchengladbach. I apologise, that is not true. Borussia Mönchengladbach put in a bid, I believe, to Chelsea for him. Chelsea said, no, but you can borrow it. And so Andreas Christensen has stayed on loan for, I think, a 2-year loan deal.
This is what's confusing.
He's in the second year.
He's in the second year, and so it was basically that's what was confusing is that he's playing for them, but the loan hasn't been, or the transfer hasn't been agreed to. So then that was why I was like, oh, I guess they must have agreed to it. It's because he's still on loan. They're just trying to make that loan move permanent.
And I apologise to Andreas Christensen's scout, Mr. Fisk. You did not mislead us. I misled myself.
There we go. All right, on to today's scouting reports. First one up from Bill Quaid. Bill is scouting Derek Etienne Jr., whom we have now seen him play in person.
He's a Richmond local, right?
He is. Playing for New York Red Bulls 2. Etienne, who's been having a solid season with New York Red Bulls 2, got his first start with the senior team in CONCACAF Champions League as the Red Bulls tied Alianza FC. Red Bulls are top of CONCACAF Champions League qualifying, of their group, that is.
So he played for the senior Red Bulls team?
He did.
All right, go Derek Etienne. We were very impressed when we saw him, right? He's got a nice service on him.
Yep.
Do you know he's always bending balls in, chipping balls over?
Yep.
All right. Up next, Ben Tondera is scouting Mason Holgate of Everton fame. Holgate started his second straight game this weekend against West Brom, says Ben, and registered an assist for Everton's second goal. Seamus Coleman remains the first choice right back, but will be out for at least another 2 weeks. So more playing time for Holgate, either in a back three or a back four.
Yeah, basically he started as like the right side of a back three against Everton, and then
against West Brom.
West Brom, and then when Lukaku came on in this game, then he moved out to right back, and it was more of a standard position for him. Yep. But he seems like he has the flexibility to do either one.
Okay, some Holgate trivia. Original family name was Hold the Gate.
Terrible, but also good. Next up, we have one from Kirsten Maladinha, scouting Briel Embolo. Briel started on the right wing for Schalke and scored a goal in their 4-1 win over FC 08 Villingen in the German Cup, the DFB Pokal. Schalke's manager is still experimenting with the lineup, so it's unclear where exactly Embolo will start at the season. Could be up top, could be out wide, could be on the bench. Who knows for sure, but we will find out when they play Eintracht Frankfurt on Saturday.
Thank you, Kirsten. Mazakine Wagner is scouting Mayowa Ali in the Faroe Islands. Yep. This is one of my favourite TSS scouting assignments.
I'm also happy that you got this one to read because have fun with those names. Just the one name.
Some Faroese names. Okay. So Mazakine says that Mayowa Ali is playing regularly in central defence for KI Klaksvik in the Faroese League. Ali's club is on track to qualify for next year's Champions League qualifiers. Oh, yeah, Faroe Islands don't go straight in, right?
No, they do not.
Okay, but he's going to be in the Champions League qualifiers. But Ali got himself into trouble when he gave an opponent, in Mazakine's words, a quick bean across the noggin.
Yeah, Mazakine was saying it was sort of akin to what Jermaine Jones did, where it was a little bit of an off-the-ball scuffle. This one, though, Mayo Ali definitely swings an arm in there.
Did you watch it?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely, he knows exactly what he's doing.
So does he get sent off?
No, the referee doesn't see it, and I don't think any punishment has happened. But
oh, so he's just in trouble karmically.
Yes. It's a little bit akin to the Dele Alli red card from last season, although that was actually caught in this situation. Or caught, I guess that was retroactive. But in this one, it looks like there's some jostling in the box. The player maybe gives him a little bit of a bump, and then there's the swing to the back of the head. Not great.
Fair enough.
Not great.
All right, Tyler, last but not least.
Comes from Thomas Bice, scouting Brendan Galloway. The Everton centre-back has moved to West Brom on a season-long loan. Thomas isn't sure what to make of the current West Brom defence, but guesses that Galloway will see more playing time now that Baines and Oviedo are back, and Ashley Williams has been signed for Everton.
I forgot that was another Everton signing.
Yeah. There's also still those persistent rumors linking Johnny Evans with a move to Arsenal. Now I think the fee that West Brom are requesting is £25 million.
Is it really?
Yeah, we'll see if that actually happens or if that's even true.
Unless you get that person at Arsenal who moves the decimal point. He's like, 2.5 million. That sounds right.
Perfect.
Let's
what could go wrong?
Thank you to everybody who has submitted scouting reports. If you would like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, it is how we support ourselves here at TSS. You can go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. Then you'll see all the options for, $5, $10, $15, $20, $25 a month, however much you want to support us by. It is administered via PayPal, but it's worth noting that you do not have to have a PayPal account to use it. Because we hear from some people, we want to support you, but I don't want to use PayPal. Mm-hmm. You do not have to use PayPal. You can use sort of your regular credit card or whatever payment you usually use.
Right, and we use those funds to, say, pay our hosting fee so that we can host the show and hopefully not get it cut off halfway through the episode, as happened last week, to pay our rent here so that we continue to have a studio, and maybe just floating this to you live on air, Mr. Grove. Maybe buy some non-squeaking chairs?
Maybe.
Can we have that? Since they seem to have gotten increasingly creaky over the last year.
Well, now we've gone 5 days a week. We sit on them every single day.
This is true. Yeah. They didn't sign up for that. They signed up for 3 days a week. All of a sudden, we've added 2 more. It's the whole big thing with the chairs. We have to renegotiate their contracts. Might have to bring in new talent. Who knows?
So this has been Tuesday's show. On Wednesday's show, we're going to answer some listener questions. If you're a TSS subscriber at $10 a month or higher, we guarantee to answer a question a month. If you have time before tomorrow, get your questions into us. We will answer them. We'll answer some of them on tomorrow's show.
Yes, and Patrick Kennedy, who told me his question by phone as opposed to by email. I have not forgotten your question. We will get to that one too.
On Thursday's show, we'll be previewing the Bundesliga because that season starts next weekend. We're going to be looking at US men's national team players in the Bundesliga. We'll be looking at it through that lens.
There it is.
Until then, and on Friday, it is the return of Laura Coots. Laura will be back in studio talking US Women's National Team, playing the Wikipedia game, maybe some tiki-taka trivia. If you listened to TSS in 2013, this is the show for you.
I do not remember tiki-taka trivia. Was that the terminology show?
Yes, It's foreign terminology, and then you get sort of clues, and you have to guess what it is.
Yeah, all right.
I always thought you would love it, but you never got to play it because you weren't here.
I did not. I think I listened to it and tried to guess and was usually wrong. And actually, I think I wrote one, too, because there's so many crazy Turkish terms for random things. It's a good time.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking with us. We will talk to you again on Wednesday. You gotta slice it.